From the ancient wisdom of Hinduism to the modern mysticism of UFO religions, humanity's quest for meaning has spawned diverse paths to understanding our existence. Join us on an illuminating journey through time and tradition as we explore the world's major faiths, each one a unique window into the human soul, shaped by prophets, preserved through persecution, and still evolving in our rapidly changing world. Christianity. Christianity emerged in the 1st century CE, rooted in the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, a Jewish preacher in Roman-occupied Judea. His message of love, forgiveness, and the coming kingdom of God resonated with many but threatened religious and political authorities. Arrested and crucified around 30 CE, his followers claimed he resurrected, igniting a movement that would transform history. Early Christians, led by figures like Peter and Paul, spread the faith across the Roman world, facing persecution yet gaining converts. By 313 CE, Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity, and in 380, Theodosius made it Rome's official religion. Doctrinal debates led to councils like Nicaea 325, shaping core beliefs, while schisms, such as the Great Schism 1054 and the Protestant Reformation 1517, reshaped its landscape. Christianity influenced art, law, and empire building, from medieval Christendom to colonial missions. Today, with over 2 billion adherents, it faces secularism, theological shifts, and interfaith dialogue. Yet, its adaptability ensures its continued evolution, blending tradition with modernity while shaping societies worldwide. Islam. Islam emerged in the 7th century CE in the deserts of Arabia, a time of tribal strife and spiritual searching. It began with Muhammad, a merchant in Mecca, who at 40 retreated to a cave on Mount Hira, seeking solace. There, he received a revelation from the angel Gabriel, commanding him to recite divine words, the first verses of the Quran. His message of monotheism and social justice disrupted Mecca's power structures, leading to persecution. In 622, he and his followers fled to Medina in the Hijra, marking the birth of the Islamic community. Within a decade, Islam spread across Arabia, uniting fractious tribes under faith and law. After Muhammad's death in 632, leadership disputes led to the Sunni-Shia schism. The Rashidun caliphs expanded Islam into Persia, Byzantium, and North Africa. The Umayyads and Abbasids fostered a golden age of science, literature, and governance. From Andalusia to Mughal India, Islam influenced art, law, and philosophy. Today, it faces modern challenges: reform, identity struggles, and geopolitics, while remaining a faith of nearly 2 billion, evolving yet steadfast in its core tenets. Hinduism. Hinduism, the world's oldest living religion, has no single founder or fixed origin. Emerging over 4,000 years ago in the Indus Valley, it evolved from a fusion of Vedic traditions, indigenous beliefs, and Dravidian practices. The Vedic period, c. 1500 to 500 BCE, saw the composition of the Rig Veda, where fire sacrifices and hymns to nature deities dominated religious life. Over time, Upanishadic thinkers challenged ritualism, introducing profound philosophical ideas of Brahman, ultimate reality, and Atman, soul. Epic literature like the Mahabharata and Ramayana shaped Hindu identity, while figures like Adi Shankaracharya, 8th century CE, unified its diverse schools through Advaita Vedanta. The Bhakti movement, 12th–18th century, democratized devotion, transcending caste and language barriers. Hinduism faced challenges under Islamic rule and British colonization, yet reformers like Swami Vivekananda revived its spiritual core. Today, Hinduism thrives across the globe, adapting to modernity while grappling with sectarian divides and social reforms. Its influence on art, politics, and philosophy remains profound, from temple architecture to yoga's global rise. More than a religion, Hinduism is a way of life, an ever-evolving tapestry of belief, inquiry, and devotion. Buddhism. Buddhism began in the 5th century BCE with Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Born into royalty in what is now Nepal, Siddhartha was deeply moved by the suffering he encountered outside his palace. He sought enlightenment through meditation and asceticism, ultimately discovering the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, teachings that would form the bedrock of Buddhism. In the centuries that followed, Buddhism spread across India, with figures like Ashoka, an Indian emperor, instrumental in its promotion. The religion faced challenges, including the rise of Hinduism and the fragmentation of the Maurya Empire, but it continued to evolve. By the 1st century CE, Buddhist monks ventured into Central Asia, China, and beyond, where it absorbed local customs and transformed into distinct schools, such as Mahayana and Theravada. Buddhism's influence grew during the Tang dynasty in China and the spread of Zen in Japan, becoming deeply intertwined with cultural and political life. Yet, it also encountered setbacks, such as the suppression of Buddhism in China during the Tang dynasty and the decline in India. Today, Buddhism faces modern challenges, including secularization and adapting to contemporary life, yet it remains a vibrant global force, evolving while staying rooted in its core principles of compassion and mindfulness. Judaism. Judaism traces its roots to the ancient Near East, emerging around 3,000 years ago with the figure of Abraham, believed to have made a covenant with God. This foundational moment, where God promises Abraham land and descendants, marks the birth of monotheism in a polytheistic world. The Israelites, his descendants, later solidified their identity through the Exodus from Egypt, led by Moses, another pivotal figure who delivers God's laws, including the Ten Commandments. As centuries passed, Judaism flourished and struggled. The establishment of the Kingdom of Israel under Saul and David marked a high point, but internal divisions led to its eventual split. The Babylonian exile in 586 BCE was a traumatic event, but it also sparked the development of the Jewish scriptures and strengthened Jewish identity. The return to Jerusalem, after Persia's conquest of Babylon, saw the rebuilding of the Temple, a symbol of spiritual renewal. Jewish belief centers on the Torah, but the Talmud, a collection of rabbinic interpretations, became equally vital, adapting to new circumstances. Throughout history, Jews faced persecution, from the Roman destruction of the Second Temple to the horrors of the Holocaust. Yet, their resilience remains. Judaism persists, evolving through Reform, conservative, and Orthodox branches, influencing global culture and politics. Today, the faith faces challenges of identity and continuity in an ever-changing world. Jainism. Jainism, one of the world's oldest religions, traces its origins to ancient India, flourishing in the 6th century BCE with the teachings of Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara. Born Vardhamana, Mahavira's life mirrored that of his contemporary, Buddha, yet Jainism remained distinct in its austere principles. Mahavira's ascetic practices and philosophy of non-violence, ahimsa, non-possessiveness, aparigraha, and truth, satya, formed the core of Jain beliefs. His teachings, transmitted orally, are captured in sacred texts like the Agamas, emphasizing strict ethical conduct and the path of liberation, moksha, through self-discipline. Jainism faced internal struggles early on, with key sectarian splits between the Digambara and Svetambara traditions, both interpreting sacred texts and practices differently, yet remaining united in their commitment to non-violence. The religion's influence permeated Indian culture, contributing to art, philosophy, and politics, particularly in merchant communities, who adopted Jain principles in their business practices. Throughout history, Jainism adapted to changing political landscapes, flourishing under various Indian dynasties while facing challenges from Hinduism, Buddhism, and later Islam. Today, Jainism, though numerically small, remains a beacon of environmental consciousness and ethical living, navigating modern challenges with the same commitment to nonviolence that has defined it for millennia. Shinto. Shinto, Japan's indigenous religion, traces its roots back to the dawn of Japanese civilization, evolving from animistic beliefs tied to nature, spirits, and ancestors. Its origins are shrouded in mystery, but by the 8th century it had solidified as the spiritual foundation of Japanese culture. Its early development focused on the worship of kami, spirits or deities, in sacred spaces like mountains, rivers, and shrines. Unlike other major religions, Shinto has no single founder or formal scripture. The Kojiki, 712 AD, and Nihon Shoki, 720 AD, are vital texts, but they are more mythological records than sacred commandments. Key figures such as Emperor Jimmu, the legendary first emperor, became central symbols in Shinto's growth, embodying the divine connection between Japan's monarchy and the kami. Over centuries, Shinto intertwined with Buddhism, influencing and being influenced by it in significant ways, including the separation of Shinto and Buddhism during the Meiji Restoration, 1868. Political rulers used Shinto to legitimize their power, notably the emperor, considered a direct descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu. Despite modernization, Shinto's practices, rituals, purification, and reverence for nature remain central to Japan's identity. Today, the religion faces challenges from secularism and modernization, but still profoundly shapes Japanese culture, festivals, and societal values. Taoism. Taoism, one of China's most enduring spiritual traditions, traces its origins to the enigmatic figure Laozi, believed to have lived in the 6th century BCE. Rooted in the ancient Chinese quest for harmony, it emerged as a counterpoint to the rigid Confucianism of the time, advocating simplicity, spontaneity, and alignment with the Tao, the natural order of the universe. Laozi's Tao Te Ching became its foundational text, guiding followers toward understanding the Tao and embracing the virtue of Wu Wei, action through non-action. Early Taoism flourished during the Eastern Han Dynasty, 25 to 120 CE, blending with religious practices, including alchemy and immortality rites. Taoist priesthoods began to emerge, focusing on rituals and healing, while internal Taoism, focused on spiritual cultivation, found fertile ground. Taoism's evolution was marked by complex interactions with Buddhism, Confucianism, and political power. The Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, saw Taoism officially recognized, but the religion's internal schisms, such as between the philosophical and religious branches, often challenged its unity. By the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, Taoism had solidified its presence in Chinese culture. Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, emerged around 3,500 years ago in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran. Founded by the prophet Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, its teachings were centered on the worship of Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity representing truth and light. Zoroaster's revelations, likely occurring in the 6th century BCE, led to the creation of the Avesta, the religion's sacred text, which outlines a cosmic battle between good and evil, symbolized by the forces of Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. During the Achaemenid Empire, 550 to 330 BCE, Zoroastrianism flourished as the state religion, with rulers like Darius I promoting its teachings. The religion's emphasis on moral dualism, ethics, and personal responsibility became foundational for later religious thought, influencing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. However, Zoroastrianism faced challenges with the rise of Islam in the 7th century, and over time, many Zoroastrians fled to India, where they became known as the Parsis. Despite their small numbers, Zoroastrians have preserved their traditions, though they now face threats from modernity and dwindling populations. Their sacred fire temples, community rituals, and devotion to maintaining purity through ritual and ethics continue to anchor their identity, offering a resilient testament to their ancient roots. Rastafarianism. Rastafarianism, born in 1930s Jamaica, emerged as a spiritual and cultural movement in response to centuries of oppression. Its roots trace back to the crowning of Emperor Haile Selassie III of Ethiopia, whose ascension was seen as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, marking the divine return of a black king to the African homeland. Marcus Garvey, an influential Pan-African leader, profoundly shaped Rastafarian beliefs, especially his prophetic call to look to Africa for the crowning of a black king. For early Rastas, Selassie became the living God, or Jah, who would lead black people to freedom. Rastafarianism developed during a time of economic hardship and racial discrimination in Jamaica. Its early adherents, largely from marginalized communities, embraced a doctrine of resistance against colonialism, racism, and the socio-economic structures that subjugated them. The movement's sacred texts include the Bible, but it is reinterpreted through a lens of Afrocentric spirituality. Key rituals include the sacramental use of cannabis and a distinctive dreadlocked appearance, symbolizing strength and a connection to the divine. Despite struggles, including political and police persecution, Rastafarianism spread globally, influencing reggae music, most notably through Bob Marley. Over time, it has adapted, addressing issues like diaspora identity, social justice, and environmentalism, while maintaining its core beliefs in liberation and the divinity of Haile Selassie. Today, its followers face challenges of modernity, yet continue to embody a resilient and transformative force in global spirituality and culture. Atheism. Atheism, the absence of belief in deities, traces its origins to ancient civilizations. Philosophers in ancient Greece, like Xenophanes and Epicurus, questioned the existence of gods, but it wasn't until the Enlightenment that atheism began to form as a more defined stance against religious authority. In 18th century Europe, thinkers such as Voltaire, Spinoza, and Diderot criticized religion's role in politics and society, laying the groundwork for secularism. The 19th century saw atheism's evolution, with figures like Friedrich Nietzsche declaring the death of God, and Charles Darwin's theory of evolution offering scientific explanations for the world. During this time, atheism began to be seen less as a philosophical curiosity and more as a challenge to religious dogma. Atheism's core belief is the rejection of gods or deities, often coupled with an emphasis on reason, science, and secular ethics. Unlike many religions, it lacks sacred texts or formal practices, instead being defined by individual thought and skepticism. Wicca. Wicca, a contemporary pagan religious movement, began in the early 20th century, rooted in ancient European traditions. It is widely attributed to Gerald Gardner, a British civil servant, who, in the 1940s, claimed to have rediscovered a witchcraft tradition that dated back to pre-Christian Europe. Gardner, who had been initiated into a coven of witches in the New Forest, England, synthesized various occult practices, drawing on folk magic, ceremonial magic, and folklore, and publicly shared his knowledge through books, most notably Witchcraft Today, 1954. This marked the formal birth of Wicca. Wicca's core beliefs revolve around reverence for nature, the worship of a dual godhead, the god and the goddess, and a commitment to the ethical Wiccan Rede, which counsels "an it harm none, do what ye will." Rituals, often held outdoors, include the observance of the 8 Sabbats, seasonal festivals celebrating the cycles of nature. In the 1960s and 1970s, Wicca flourished during the counterculture movement, attracting a diverse following. But internal disagreements, such as those between Gardnerians and Alexandrians, led to schisms. Modern Wicca has diversified, embracing eclecticism and a broad range of beliefs. Today, it faces new challenges in maintaining its identity amid a rapidly changing world. Ready to deepen your understanding? Subscribe now to explore more fascinating stories like this.